This is the All Pro Wrestling 100 Podcast for the week of September 18th, 2019, episode 003. This is All Pro Wrestling and only Pro Wrestling. I'm your host, JB, and in the next hour, I'm going to bring you news, rumors, and event recaps, including NXT on USA on Wednesday, Impact on Access TV, new deal. We got Lesbians in Love. We got Clash of the Champions recaps. Rusev has an illegitimate child. One of the most embarrassing pay-per-views of all time. We're going to talk Ring of Honor Global Wars. We'll revisit our territory draft from last week, and we'll give you some new fantasy territory booking conundrums to work out. It's a busy week, folks, so let's get right to our second segment and tackle some NXT here. NXT on Wednesdays on USA. Everybody get up out your seats and dance. Try to forget that Wednesday nights was supposed to be Cody's night with the Young Bucks to bring you fresh new talent with a new face, new style production, new style promos, youth. Nah. Now you're going to get what you've had from Hunter on the network for months, years. NXT on USA began. I know that's what you all want to know about, so we're going to start with that, and then we'll work our way back to last Friday night. We're going to kick it off with Hunter Hearst Helmsley standing in the back with a really cool promo telling you that he wants to show you what they're all about. He walks outside, and all of a sudden it looks like a Raw or a SmackDown as far as the production value goes. I've often thought that these kids at Full Sail University didn't really know how to put on a television show. I'm not sure who ran the production, whether they had legitimate TV guys back there, or whether this was truly a development territory where kids were learning to use cameras, the same as kids were learning to take back bumps off the second rope. They would miss spots, switching cameras way too often and way too frenetically. It gave me a headache sometimes trying to watch NXT. Obviously, the promos aren't always great. This was a development territory, folks, but you get the idea in the first 1 minute that some of those kids were sent back to class and some adults came and took control of the camera. I'm sure Vince had a call or 10 with Hunter to try to make sure that this looked professional and looked like something the USA Network wanted to invest all this money in. We start off with a women's match, Fatal 4-Way. Smart move by Hunter. That's what people want to see right now. Both men and women want to see women's wrestling right now. So he threw 4 attractive young ladies at us. We start with Io Shirai. I liked her a lot. Versus Bianca Belair with her ridiculous ponytail, who I expected to win the match. She's tall, physical, imposing. She's got a unique character. She's been around a long time down there. Been waiting for her to get called up. Hasn't happened yet. Mia Yim, who some of you might know as Jade from the independent circuit, came out in some Asian gangland gimmick. It's terrible. I remember when she was in the dollhouse and she was all sexy, running around being a heel, and she eventually ended up switching to an MMA character and feuded with Gail Kim. Was very talented. Now she's an Asian gang member, and you see flashes of the ability that she has. She's a great wrestler, but she's saddled with a terrible gimmick like a lot of people in WWE. They're asked to be a clown in order to get on television. So a woman who's put a whole career together, out there being a serious wrestler, is now an Asian gang member. And finally, Candice LeRae, the least deserving woman in the ring. She's fun to watch get beat up. And so, of course, she gets to win. She takes good bumps. Besides that, I have no idea what she was even doing in the ring. She's Johnny Gargano's wife. Who cares? I don't know. Io Shirai was cool. Bianca Belair is Bianca Belair. She is going to print money on the main card at some point. But I don't know. The Asian gang member and Candice LeRae make this look gimmicky. And it looks like minor league wrestling. And that's what NXT is. But, hey, high production value tonight. Let's be optimistic. Let's not trash this. Candice LeRae wins via Jade doing all the work. That's awesome. Shayna Baszler comes out for the 12 people who watch the USA Network and have yet to ever see the WWE Network. They're completely shocked to see Shayna Baszler and her lady friends come out and harass somebody, because that's only been happening for over a year now on the network. But let's move on. It was a really strong opening 13 minutes. After that, we have about 20 minutes that look a lot like an independent wrestling promotion. So we'll move on to one of the greatest gimmicks, speaking of gimmicks, in all of pro wrestling, the Velveteen Dream. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Velveteen Dream is coming. Yeah, everybody is a big fan, and everybody who watches this kid knows he's the future of pro wrestling. So the Velveteen Dream comes out against some jabroni named Roderick Strong that Triple H has been trying to push to us since Moses wore short pants with this Undisputed Era. They put on a great 30-minute match where Velveteen Dream sells everything, rolls around, looks great, looks like a professional wrestler, and loses his North American title. Everybody hates it, but listen, there's good news, folks. Oh, I know. Listen, they're rioting. They're rioting. They're throwing neon-framed sunglasses into the ring. Wait a minute. There's a feather boa. It's falling very slowly. It's very slow because it's a feather boa. It doesn't fall with any great rate of speed. It's physics. They're taking off all of their flamboyant costumery that they bought to cheer Velveteen Dream, and they're throwing it at female officials in the ring. Don't worry, ladies and gentlemen, because the Velveteen Dream is going to win his belt back against Cody Rhodes the first night that AEW runs opposite NXT on USA. If he even stays on NXT long enough for anybody to care. Because with a draft coming and everybody wanting to throw everything at the wall to see what sticks, it's quite possible he gets drafted up and shows up on Raw. I would say SmackDown, but you remember, we've got to consider the drunk guys in bars across the country and what they're going to watch on their TV on mute in that bar, like they used to watch the UFC in this time slot. So the New Day's not going to work. You can throw women's wrestlers at them. You can throw Brock Lesnar at him, like I predicted. We'll get to that later. But you can't throw the Velveteen Dream at him, I don't think. I know it's 2019, but we may need a few more years before the target UFC audience in a bar, having drank 2.5 pitchers of beer by 8 o'clock, is going to be ready to stare at the Velveteen Dream come out and cut a promo on Roderick Strong. This match is actually kind of formulaic. I've seen this match done many times almost the same way. However, these Full Sail dullards, I mean students at Full Sail University and local marks from the Full Sail campus, they were just eating this up. They were loving it. My favorite part of the match actually had nothing to do with what was going on inside the ring. For those of you that have this on tape, or I don't know when it'll show up on the network with the delay, but the last 5 minutes of this match, so probably about the 55-minute mark, you got fans chanting, Velveteen, Velveteen, but a lot of the fans, they just forget who they're supposed to mark out to. So some of them chant for Velveteen Dream, and then the others, they just fall into their conditioned programming of marking out to Hunter. So you got people chanting Velveteen, and right next to him, you got a guy like a drone with these glassy eyes, all bug-eyed wide, staring blankly forward, yelling, NXT, NXT. So you got Velveteen and NXT, and it comes out as VelvXT, VelvXT, which sounds kind of like a roller coaster that I don't want to ride on, or maybe an erectile dysfunction pill. Either way, I don't want to hear VelvXT being shouted by like 80,000 people at WrestleMania. So for all of you that say that NXT is an indicator of what's going to work on the main card, just remember, VelvXT, folks. Full Sail University, I love it. I only know one guy that's ever graduated from Full Sail University. And, I'm not burying the school, but to anybody that's ever listened to the Howard Stern Show, I have been listening to J.D. Harmeyer not be able to put one single sentence together that made any sense for 12 years now. Okay, he's got a wife he can't control that's running around on Instagram, like showing her body parts, and his job, he's a movie producer who's worked for 12 years to try to make movies, and he basically records TV with Howard's TiVo. But Howard's got 2 TiVos, so JD's a really hardworking man. JD's made exactly no movies in 12 years as a movie producer, and he is a Full Sail graduate, and he is probably the most successful Full Sail graduate running around right now bragging about having went to Full Sail. The people he left behind, yeah, they're on their 13th year of their 5-year video production degree screaming VelvXT on USA. Congratulations, Full Sail. You looked great. You produced some great TV if any of your students had anything to do with that production, but choose a chant next time, okay? Choose a guy in the ring to chant for. I know Hunter has conditioned you all to chant him and put him over. That's what NXT is. This is not ECW. NXT will never be ECW. And for those of you that want to yell AEW or NXT, you're just emulating something you saw happen in the past. All right. When New Jack stabs a guy in the ring on NXT, when Io Shirai stabs Candice LeRae because she doesn't deserve to be in the ring, then I'll chant NXT. Those guys in ECW, they did things to get people to chant ECW. When somebody jumps off like a third-story balcony onto a concrete floor with no one to catch them on NXT, hell, I'll put NXT over. I'll even buy a t-shirt. But please don't confuse NXT in 2019 with some other thing from some other era. Full Sail. They don't teach wrestling history at Full Sail, though. They don't teach coordinated chanting at Full Sail either. Now that we've covered what's happened on NXT on USA, I wanted to start with our history segment tonight because I had planned on actually covering the NXT versus AEW feud that's about to start. This is a mini war. And I wanted to cover the 3 times in the past where shows have intentionally went directly head-to-head against each other on television and kind of go over what led to it, how long it lasted, who ended up winning those battles. Just to review the timeline here, AEW announced a TV deal with TNT in July, and that TNT deal was starting Wednesday, October 2nd, so that's about 3 months that they gave themselves to get ready to shore up a roster and get their production team in line and do anything else they needed to do to put a live television product on a major cable network indefinitely on a weekly basis. So Vince, on the other hand, he announces that he's going to fill a vacancy of pro wrestling on the USA Network. The earliest I could find the announcement hinted at was August 20th, and obviously it happened Wednesday, September 18th. Vince didn't even give himself a month, a full calendar month. He rushed into this with NXT now already having had a standard we talked about earlier, a low production value standard comparatively to the Monday and the Tuesday night programs. It is a minor league. He, within 29 days, forced this product live onto the air. He couldn't even arrange the scenario where the network could transition this product to USA in time, so now it's split as a way, he's going to try to say that this is to promote the network. Again, there's 12 people who watch USA Wrestling and have been considering the network but haven't already bought. That's like 12 of them. You've already got like one of them this week, so there's 11 people left, okay? And if you were really looking at this as a long-term strategy to push the network, then you would be doing it for more than 4 weeks. The truth is, as soon as he can, he's moving all 2 hours to USA to compete head-to-head with Cody Rhodes. That's the whole point of this. Now, this may damage AEW, but it's also damaging NXT, because NXT is a developmental territory. We talked last week about the possibility of Enzo and Cass arriving back at NXT to help boost ratings. If this is a developmental territory, the last thing you want to do are bring in 2 guys who failed. They are failed experiments. They went to the main roster through NXT, and now they're unemployed. For whatever reason, it didn't work out, and they've both had locker room issues, and you're going to bring those guys into a scenario where they're mentoring young talent. That's the worst thing you could possibly do. And if you're keeping the same management, then a management team that used to be focused on getting people ready for taped programming and teaching them things, now that management team has to focus on having a cable TV product ready each week, having scripts that have to be approved and then reapproved and resubmitted and red lines drawn through everything. There's less attention to detail than in the development of each individual wrestler and character. So less people are going to be ready to be pulled to the main roster. So if you are hurting AEW, who's taken the most damage here? Something else you need to think about is the fact that NXT is the minor league. Think about baseball fans. You got baseball fans, they're passionate about their team. You know, there's a guy out there, the equivalent of a guy buying a Roman Reigns t-shirt for him and his kid. He's passionate about a handful of wrestlers. But he's not interested in the minor leagues. Your average baseball fan isn't interested in minor league baseball. No, it's a niche fan, a hardcore super fan of baseball that wants to know all the names of the minor league guys for all the clubs so that he knows when a guy gets called up in the 8th inning in September to pinch hit in a meaningless game, he knows all the guys' stats. There are very few people that are that passionate about baseball. That's why there aren't minor league baseball teams with major cable contracts for broadcasting, and that's why you've got to be careful with promoting your minor league wrestling with major television distribution, because they may not be ready, but you may not have a fan base. You're oversaturating your own market. People are going to watch AEW because they're curious about a new company. But as far as the WWE consumer goes, between Raw and SmackDown and the standard pay-per-views and the network and all of the other network programming, and now events that you're holding in the Middle East and in Australia. You're pulling guys now, veterans like Goldberg, and you're putting them in matches with no storyline where fans don't even have time to get ready. Hey, you've got a pay-per-view on Saturday morning and it's going to be 5 hours long. Get ready. It's an exciting time to be a wrestling fan, but people have other things they're interested in. And if Vince McMahon is throwing yet another 2-hour product out there for his fans, he may find he's going to drive away as many fans as he ends up gathering from Cody Rhodes. If you want to succeed, one thing you don't want to do is take the same thing that you've been showing on the network that you've already maxed out the people that are interested in, and then broadcast that to even more people that probably aren't interested. You don't need that. That's not something you're looking to do. Here's an idea, though. You've got an NXT UK, and you've got an NXT. So what you need to do, if you're going to try to make minor league wrestling appeal to the masses, like minor league baseball, then show them a minor league all-star game. And you take your most popular and most athletic performers from both the NXTs, the UK and the homegrown United States version. Take the best women from both products. Take the people with the biggest social media following and feature them each week. And only do it for an hour. You don't need all the marbles. So feature them for an hour, show 2 matches and a lot of promos, and drive people to your network. Show the best of your minor league, rather than all of your minor league, because people are going to change the channel. There's just too much else to do right now. Here's another idea. You need to feature your best gimmicks and your best talent, and that's the Velveteen Dream, and everybody knows that that's the Velveteen Dream. So why don't we just... Yeah, okay. Exactly. So feature the Velveteen Dream. No matter what that means, because he's somebody you spent time developing. Either bring him up to the main roster or let him be featured on NXT each week. But don't put him in line behind a bunch of other people so that everybody can get their shot, because this is cable television now. You need to keep an audience. You can't go hire Eric Bischoff to go help Triple H, because Eric Bischoff already has a job now for your company. At this point, again, you're competing with yourself if you're the WWE. You're pulling your fans in so many different directions that they're going to need a vacation from pro wrestling. And, the last time fans took a vacation from pro wrestling, a lot of them chose not to ever come back. Also, you want to follow all the trends in modern wrestling. You don't want to fight and buck the system. And the biggest trend right now in modern day 2019 pro wrestling is women's pro wrestling. Everybody loves it. Men love it. Women love it. So feature it. And I think that's why they started with a Fatal 4-Way women's match on USA. You need more of that. I think that the WWE has enough right now where they should have their own women's show on the network. If 205 Live continues to be given more and more rope to hang itself, why don't the women have an hour or a 2-hour-long show where they can cut promos, where they could feature a few matches, and give people yet another reason to go to the network? Eventually, something cool might happen on there that you end up needing to pull up for one of your main cable programs. Again, I think there should be less WWE cable programming right now, but if you're going to continue to bring more and more programming to the market, then feature your best talent and do it in the right way, not minor league pro wrestling. Assuming that AEW becomes a major contender or a solid number 2 or 3 wrestling promotion, which it will, then this will be the 4th time in history that rival professional wrestling companies have chosen to go head-to-head on television against each other. So let's take a look at the 3 previous times that this has happened and how it's worked out for everybody involved.
Let's do this.
All right, we're going to start, of course, with the most famous, Monday Nitro choosing to go head-to-head with Monday Night Raw. This was Eric Bischoff and WCW. This worked out for 3 years or so, and for 86 weeks, WCW did beat Raw in the ratings. For a detailed list of how this went week to week, you can read the book The Death of WCW by Brian Alvarez, I believe. Great book, and it actually takes week by week, show by show, pay-per-view by pay-per-view. It even gives you house show breakdowns and explains how they went about beating WWE and then what led to their downfall. It's fascinating if you study either business or pro wrestling. Nitro ran against Raw until WCW went out of business and was acquired by Vince McMahon. The second example, same 2 companies, Thunder and SmackDown ran at the same time on Thursdays. Thunder was started because WCW's roster was so large at the time that they couldn't feature all of their talent, and there was a hiring freeze that had went on from the Turner Group. So Bischoff requested and was given the rights to sign Bret Hart, feature him on Thursday Thunder and move some talent that hadn't had a chance to get on Nitro onto Thunder. It peaked and had already been falling in the ratings at the time that SmackDown began. They ran at the same time from August of 99 to January 2000, so it was only about 5 months, and then Thunder ended up moving to a different time, ended up failing there as well, and became a taped program that was taped immediately following Nitro. And that's the beginning of the end when you're trying to run a live Nitro and you expect people to stay for dark matches, 3 hours of Nitro, and then stick around for a half hour and wait for you to begin taping Thunder and tape 2 hours of Thunder. So it was over. Again, oversaturation of WCW led to their downfall. Vince, take note. So that experiment didn't work for longer than 5 months, and finally, the third time this happened, Eric Bischoff and Hulk Hogan were brought in to TNA Impact to try to give him a shot in the arm. Their first big idea. Bischoff tries to back off of the responsibility of this now in retrospect, but their first big idea was to convince Dixie Carter to run directly against Monday Night Raw to get brand exposure and kind of piggyback off the success Raw was having. Raw at this point had lost its huge ratings from the Monday Night Wars, but still was carrying steady ratings and around in the 5s, I believe. So TNA Impact goes head-to-head with Raw. Week 1, it pulls a 1.5. which is the best it's ever done in the history of TNA Impact. Ratings dropped from there. Week 10, TNA was at a 0.8. Week 9, they had been at a 0.5, so it was actually quite an increase. They'd went up 60% in 1 week, but Bischoff moved them to a different time slot that wasn't on Monday night running against Vince anymore to try to keep the new fans they gained. It was more of a publicity stunt than anything else. Hey, look over here. We've got Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair, and they're going to get bloody one more time in the ring. But it didn't work out. So, although the Monday Night Wars led to some of the greatest creative in the history of pro wrestling, generally speaking, when companies choose to run against each other in time slots, it's not good for either company. So if Vince wants to look at precedent, he can say, one precedent is, well, I won all of these past battles where I ran against somebody because I'm still standing. And okay, yeah, you can look at it that way, but it didn't help SmackDown to run against Thunder. Okay? And it didn't help Impact to come run against Raw. And ultimately, I don't know that it helped Nitro running against Raw. But it forced Raw to be a better product. So, if anything, we can expect that NXT, trying to cockblock AEW, will force AEW to be a better product. It'll force them to be more aggressive in signing new talent and going after established WWE talent that's unsatisfied with their current role in the company. It'll force them to go out and vulture other companies' talents, like they've already been accused of doing with Major League Wrestling. It'll force them to get better and more aggressive. But I don't know that any of that necessarily helps Vince McMahon, so this was not probably what he intends when he intends on going to battle with AEW. Believe it or not, there are actually other days of the week other than Wednesday. And although all of you want to hear about NXT versus AEW, there are 6 other shows that took place this week, so we're going to get in the time machine. We're going to head back to Friday night. Let's get into some news and some rumors. Impact Wrestling Friday Night, taped in AAA Mexico, kicks off Kiera Hogan versus Tenille Dashwood in her Impact Wrestling debut. Tenille Dashwood looked tired or something. You can fill in the blank there. There was something wrong with her, though. Generally disinterested, slow-moving, eyes glassed over, half open. Looked like she was going to fall asleep 3 times during the match. I give her credit and say it was jet lag, except there's really no time difference going directly south into Mexico, so I'm not sure what her problem was. I hope she gets better when they enter Canada. Again, same time zone, Tenille, so the jet lag excuse will only work once. Kiera Hogan, meanwhile, get to a little news and rumor section here. Kiera Hogan announced on Instagram that she's been involved in a secret relationship with fellow Impact knockout Diamante, originally I believe from AAA Mexico. She came up as a valet for the tag team LAX 2.5 or 3 years ago, and she went out with a torn ACL 2 years ago at this point. Kiera posted pictures on Instagram of the two of them kissing this week. Hey, listen, I love Kiera Hogan. I've loved Kiera Hogan for a couple of months now, since she stopped with the Hulk Hogan red and yellow and switched to the bluish platinum look, and she turned heel. She's been hanging out with Madison Rayne. I've been putting Kiera Hogan over for a while. In other Kiera Hogan news, she signed a long-term deal with Impact. For Impact, a long-term deal is about 2.5 months. So I assume a long-term deal means 3 years. Signed a long-term deal with Impact and then made this announcement. I assume the two are correlated. Don Callis has been pushing the envelope. This can't be a bad thing for Impact Wrestling. I think it's great. I liked Diamante, and I had wondered what happened to her, but not enough to actually go out and look. So Diamante, I don't believe, is actually on Instagram, but her picture's all over Instagram now, thanks to Kiera Hogan. Just to let you know, for a heads up, there's a team called Fire and Adrenaline, which is going to be Kiera Hogan and her girlfriend Diamante, featured on Season 2 of Women of Wrestling WOW on Access TV. Taya Valkyrie and Rosemary cut a promo together in Rosemary's basement where Taya Valkyrie gives Rosemary an iPhone. If you don't watch Impact, then you don't get to see Rosemary, and you don't get to see Taya Valkyrie. And that's a shame for you, because they're both awesome. So this week, Taya gave Rosemary an iPhone, and I was very interested. Ken Shamrock tipped his hand this week as to why he's back in Impact Wrestling these days. It's to promote his new bare knuckle fighting tournament. I'm back in business, baby! Yeah, Valor Heavyweight Bare Knuckle Fighting, September 21st. Deep in the woods of some Indian reservation somewhere, Ken Shamrock. Guys with no gloves get in a caged area and beat each other to death on pay-per-view.
Are you professional or not?
I'm not sure. Shamrock versus Moose is coming up soon in Las Vegas. That'll be cool. Big Mammy and Nino Hamburguesa versus the Desi Hit Squad in AAA Mexico on Impact Wrestling, and the only thing I can say is, what the I mean, seriously, I've never seen anything like this. That match by itself was worth watching the whole program for. Next up, Ohio versus Everything. Sami Callihan and Jake Christ taking on Tommy Dreamer, the American Dreamer. Tommy the American Dreamer, and Tessa Blanchard. Sapphire came out with Tommy the American Dreamer. Is anybody else tired of Tommy Dreamer reverting to this Dusty Rhodes character in his later years? He's 52. He's got polka-dotted yellow pants, and he does the little fist roll thing, and he does the elbow, and he does the finger gimmick, and he does the ass-shaking gimmick. And I'll tell you another thing I noticed. Tessa Blanchard looks particularly hot when she's surrounded by men. I mean, it's easy to look hot when you're in a match with the dudes from OVE. And I guess it's good. They're playing to everybody's strong suit, putting Rosemary and Taya Valkyrie in matches with each other, putting Kiera Hogan and Desiderata in matches. We're going to talk about that in a minute. Sexiest match of the year candidate, Kiera Hogan versus Desiderata from Victory Road. But Tessa Blanchard, I've always thought, had a man jaw, and when I look at her, I see Tully Blanchard. When I look at Tessa Blanchard, I think of that First Blood match where J.J. Dillon and Tully Blanchard were fighting against Dusty Rhodes, and there were scissors, and Tully was wearing this amateur wrestling hat, like face mask, and I don't know. I don't even remember who won. It was for the TV title, but it was at a pay-per-view, and that never made any sense. Like, why is the TV title being defended at a pay-per-view? And when I look at Tessa, I can't help but think of her bloody dad rolling around with a fat man with amateur wrestling gear. And maybe that's my fault, or maybe it's because she's got man-like features, and she fights men, and she does man things, and she's always in the ring with these men. But, you know, she's got a woman's body, so she looks particularly hot when she's in the ring with Ohio versus Everything. Everything! So your next world champion, Sami Callihan, gets over on Tommy Dreamer. Oh, here we go again. Listen, it's a fact, folks. Sami Callihan, the most talented heel in professional wrestling. Get over it. He gets booed harder than Goldberg, folks. Get over it. The match ends with ECW showing up and it being 1996 again and the Y2K virus infecting everybody's smartphones. No, Rob Van Dam ran out with Rhino. For real. Rob Van Dam and Rhino ran out and hung out in the ring with the American Dreamer and Tessa Blanchard. And again, Tessa looked like the youngest, most attractive female in the ring when surrounded by these guys. Oh, come on. It's funny because it's true. Okay, let's move on. Operation Override in Oklahoma. This is an event that's happening on Friday, basically while Impact is airing, but this one's live. It's going to be on Twitch. Terrible production value, but this is the reemergence of Oklahoma and Texas territory wrestling, something we've been talking about every week on this podcast. We've got a game we're playing about manage your own territory. The world-class champion, referring to the former Von Erich territory down in the Sportatorium in West Texas, now the world-class champion being competed for by MVP versus Chavo Guerrero Jr. That match was kind of forgettable, but there were other good matches at the show. The show starts off talking about the road to Bound for Glory, which I've been talking about for 2 weeks because that's what they've been promoting. Turns out Victory Road is tomorrow night. And I'm like, what? Yeah, Victory Road, one of the most historic TNA pay-per-views, has been an afterthought. I didn't understand why, but after watching Victory Road, I did. Right now, Sami Callihan shows up because they can't begin their pay-per-view for some reason. Operation Override is on an Indian reservation, so they had some trouble getting started. But whatever happened, Josh Matthews is stuck sitting in front of some bleachers, it looks like, and he gets Sami Callihan with him. Everybody's favorite heel. Yeah, I knew that was coming. But listen, Sami provided some great comedy. Sami talks about the fact that he's lost 19 pounds. Title push. Title push. Oh, here you are again. The boos increase. He claims he's 37% Indian, or his dad was 37% Indian, so I guess that makes him 18.5% Indian. No Brian Cage comedy promos, though, before the Twitch pay-per-view, I notice. If you remember last week, I told you that Anthem Entertainment had purchased Access TV and HDNet Movies, and that it was just a matter of time before Impact announced a new spot on Access. And as it turns out, I made those statements and I published the podcast. And within 3 days of me making the statements and 2 days of me publishing, Impact put together a promo package that they played all weekend long. Well done, high production value, advertising that they're going to have a new spot on Access TV. So Access is going to have a lineup of New Japan Pro Wrestling, Impact Wrestling, and Women of Wrestling WOW. Also, Women of Wrestling WOW features a lot of the Impact knockouts, so there'll be crossover. This will be exciting for both wrestling fans, and it'll be a good thing for Impact Wrestling, helping them get more exposure from a new audience who might not have been able to see them on Pop TV or been watching these terrible Twitch events like Operation Override. So when they return from their really great promo with high production value, they've got the North, the tag team champions, who I can't stand, by the way, sitting there on the mics, and while the North are trying to cut a promo, their mics go out. And the mics stay out, and the show loses all audio for quite some time, which was fine. This place looked like a high school gym. It was empty. I'm going to say they had 200 people. That might be generous, but I love Impact, so we're going to say 200 people. And why not? Who cares? They got 200 people to literally come out to the reservation and watch them put on a show. Hopefully this house show will be the end of the Bush League house shows that Impact's been putting on now that they've got a major TV deal coming, and they're settling in, they're finishing up their last run of contractual obligations and partnerships with local territories. I'm hoping that the next run can be a little more consistent, a little more spaced out, so we're not doing back-to-back nights, and everybody can have a little higher production value. Kiera Hogan and Desiderata, a Native American woman, a female professional wrestler, very hot, take on Rosemary and Taya Valkyrie, the Impact Knockouts champion. These two are working a program against each other, but now they're going to work together in this tag match. This is right after Kiera Hogan signed her long-term deal, and she kind of chokes in her promo. Desiderata doesn't really get any mic time. Kiera's like, who are you supposed to be? This leads to a match at Victory Road between these two. Also, Rosemary and Taya fight at Victory Road. But Desiderata is something else, and she stands out in this match. She scalps her opponents. And the second time she did it, she mimics a scalp. The announce team says, I don't think we can talk about what she's doing in there. Because I don't think you can say that there's a Native American scalping an Aryan woman in the center of a ring in a pro wrestling match on an Indian reservation. That's what makes Impact so awesome. Seriously, you're not going to see this stuff anywhere else. And by the way, did I mention that Big Mammy and Nino Hamburguesa fought earlier? And yeah, that was crazy. But here we are, Desiderata. She wrestles in what look like bra and panties. And I know you think you've seen that because Sasha Banks wrestles in what look like bra and panties. No. You haven't seen a woman wrestle in bra and panties until you've seen Desiderata wrestle in bra and panties. Desiderata is part of this Arrow Club. It's like a play off the Bullet Club, but it's all Native Americans. And they have what would be considered racist graphics if they weren't all actually Native American. So that's interesting as well. It's a shame this whole broadcast didn't have slightly higher production value, because there were some great moments here. The main event is Eddie Edwards versus Sami Callihan in a return match. They've done this match a lot of times. Since Sami Callihan accidentally smashed Eddie Edwards in the eye socket with a baseball bat at full speed and broke his orbital. This is an amazing match. Talk about hardcore. Sami Callihan uses bamboo spears in Eddie Edwards' gums. He stabs Eddie Edward in the top of the head with the bamboo spears. There's a groin wrenching, an actual like industrial wrench attached to somebody's groin. There's a stabbing in the back. Anyway, Eddie reverses the Cactus Special pile driver and gets the pin. Brian Cage runs in somehow after the match. Brian Cage, the guy who can't defend the world title because he can't get cleared to wrestle, but he swears he'll show up at Bound for Glory. Now he shows up here at an Indian reservation. And he's going to show up at Victory Road for a tag match, and I just don't understand why they don't take this title from this guy, especially if he's injured. Just hold him down. Just take the title and run away real fast. He's slow. He's injured. I'll tell you, that's why you need Harley Race. The world needs more Harley Races. You're going to hijack Harley Race's world title, he'll shoot you in your kneecap. She'll never wrestle again. It's over with. Victory Road used to be a Paramount TNA pay-per-view. Some great moments in the history of TNA and in the history of pro wrestling. Sting, Jeff Hardy, AJ Styles, Samoa Joe, Kurt Angle. Now Victory Road is relegated to an empty venue, a couple hundred people, no promotion. It's sad. It makes me sad. Next year, Victory Road's going to be a big deal again, but this was one of the saddest pay-per-views I've ever seen. And this is the bottom of the barrel for the new Impact Wrestling. Anthem, let this be the bottom of the barrel, because you're on the upswing, but you can't let this kind of thing happen again. I sat through it. There were some highlights, and I'm going to report on it. But if you do this again next year, I'm not going to report on it. Ring of Honor could have put on this show. Let's go start with Kiera, Hogan, and Desiderata. I talked about it earlier. This is one of the sexiest match of the year nominees. Now, the way we're going to do this is we're going to start with the time I started this podcast. So we're starting in August and moving forward. It's only going to be 4 or 5 months of the year. I called this the Battle of the Backsides while it was happening. I mean, the real storyline is the night before, Kiera Hogan cut a terrible promo and she actually wore a normal pair of shorts. A lot of the times up in Canada, she wears these shorts that go right up inside her big ass. And it looks great and everybody loves it. But on this night, on the Indian reservation, she covered up some. But Desiderata, she wore panties and a sports bra. And so Kiera Hogan, when they end up in a match with just the two of them, decides to try to out-sexy the sexy. And the two of these ladies put on a stiff match. It's very sexy. It's two ladies in their panties, a Native American and an African American, rolling around, loving pro wrestling, giving about 35 fans in a high school gymnasium on an Indian reservation something to cheer for. And you know, isn't that really what America's all about? In a rematch of the World Class Championship match from the night before, MVP beats Chavo Guerrero Jr. to become a 3-time World Class Champion. Rosemary and Taya Valkyrie fight for the Knockouts title. Taya's been champ for 251 days. She sprays hairspray in Rosemary's eyes, stomps her, and pins her. There'll be a feud for a while. Rosemary will eventually become a 2-time Knockouts champ. This is a good feud, though. UFC Hall of Famer Stephan Bonner versus Moose. Cool match. I was kind of shocked to see this. I always thought Bonner's character and promo abilities in the UFC would translate well in a pro wrestling format, but it's just a shame that it had to take place on 2019 Impact Victory Road. I'm sure that's not what Stephan Bonner had in mind. In what was supposed to be the main event, Brian Cage, the world champion, and Eddie Edwards, you know, the world champion who can't defend the world title? Yeah, Eddie Edwards and Brian Cage in a meaningless tag match. It's a throwaway. I have no idea what's going on here. This guy can't defend the belt, but he can come in and by the way, he's terrible in the tag match. He's got his hands on his knees. He's panting. This is a warm-up match. You're using the Victory Road main event as a warm-up match for your deadbeat world champion. The match ends so early that they have to throw together another match real quick to put out there to end the card. So they end up with TJ Perkins versus Michael Elgin, and they let Elgin squash Perkins in like 6 minutes in a main event with no build-up. It made no sense. They're lucky Michael Elgin was there. That was an embarrassing finish to the worst pay-per-view I've ever seen. And the matches weren't bad, but the production was terrible. And there was no story for most of these matches. Again, the performers are outperforming the management of the company, but this is going to be the end of the Bush League Impact era. Let's talk a little Ring of Honor Global Wars. 3 cities, 3 nights: Milwaukee, Dearborn, Detroit. I found 2 matches worth covering. That sounds about right for Ring of Honor. Let's talk a little Mandy Leone and Angelina Love versus Women of Honor champion Kelly Klein and Stacy Shadows, a local girl. Kelly gets a clean pin on Angelina. Now, Angelina is an NWA and a Knockouts female champion. Angelina's got a resume here that says she's not going to just come in here and job. So the fact that Kelly gets that clean pin and that Angelina's been kind of acting cowardly lately probably means that Angelina is going to come out on top and win the title at the pay-per-view Death Before Dishonor on September 27th. I am not that big of a Ring of Honor fan, but I like the Women of Honor. I'm always a fan of watching women roll around awkwardly in a ring for 8 or 9 minutes, and that's about what they give us. We actually had some guys worth watching. In the Milwaukee part of this 3-night event, Joe Hendry fought Marty Scurll. Joe Hendry's awesome, by the way. He sings songs and does music videos. Impact actually gave the guy a storyline and a chance to show that he's funny and develop a character, as opposed to Ring of Honor, who does nothing with him except exploit the character he's made elsewhere and never gives him any time to promote himself. He had this great match with Marty Scurll, and Joe does everything right, and Marty gets over again. And they put this guy over all the time. I was excited about this match, but as usual, Ring of Honor does everything wrong. So even when they have good parts in a match, they just don't do the right thing with them. And this is why they are absolutely an example of a minor league team that is never going to be able to step up until they change management. Let's move on now. WWE Clash of Champions, folks. It's everybody's favorite pay-per-view. Everybody's favorite WWE incarnation of an event that was once awesome in WCW. I liked the gold ring, the posts, and the effects. Dolph Ziggler and half of beer money beat Seth Rollins and Braun Strowman to win the WWE Raw Tag Team Championships. We had 3 great wrestlers in this match. Dolph attempted a second DDT. Seth caught him in the air, converted into a Falcon's Arrow suplex. Very cool. And out of Seth's normal moveset. So that's awesome. Dolph must have wrote that one, because Seth only knows how to do moves in a certain order anymore. Another DDT later by Bobby Roode and a clean pin on Seth Rollins. How about that? Becky with a rare good promo. Of course, it was backstage. So it took a team of 28 riders and a Sherpa and a mountain lion to help Becky Lynch cut a decent promo. That's fine. Because at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is that she's the man. I know it because she's been telling me she's the man since the Reagan administration. And have you seen her shirt? Her shirt tells you she's the man. In the Stone Cold Steve Austin block letters. Charlotte versus Bayley for the blue version of the women's title. If she keeps getting this reaction, I'm going to have to start calling her Booley. I love Bayley now, a little bit of depth to her character, but everybody boos her now. That's a shame. I'm telling you, it shouldn't be heel behavior that gets you booed. It should be heel intent. I don't know that hypothesis actually stands up, but we'll see. Remember, the same people booing Bayley right now used to serenade her with love songs not too long ago. I love that. I wish I had a sound drop of that NXT UK thing. But billed as Charlotte in her own backyard, Bayley removes the bottom turnbuckle pad, slams Charlotte's head into it somehow, and pins her. So maybe that right there is heel intent. Bayley retains and then runs away with the title. Bayley running away and the camera shot of her from behind was way more entertaining than the Revival versus the New Day. The Revival steals TJ Perkins' reverse figure 4 move to tap out Xavier Woods. And then they go promo on the ramp and steal Jericho's "You're Welcome" line. The Revival sits around all weekend watching independent pro wrestling and stealing other people's gimmicks. I hope Arn Anderson slaps the hell out of these guys next time he sees them in a bar. Alexa, Nikki, Carmella, and Truth all cut a backstage promo. That was pretty cool. There's a Raw Women's Tag Title match. Mandy Rose and Sonya Deville versus Alexa and Nikki. During the match, the whole 24/7 title championship crew comes running through the usual cast of characters, and Alexa nearly pins R-Truth. That was kind of cool. Nikki Cross does some sexy hip swiveling and gyrating in the match to taunt Mandy Rose, and the whole place blows up. Corey Graves tries to bury it, but then realizes that there'll be a backlash online if he tries to bury Nikki Cross being sexy, so he just sits there silently through the rest of the match. I don't know why they keep trying to present Nikki Cross like she's not attractive. She's the only girl on the roster who doesn't have hair extensions down past her knees and who doesn't cake on makeup. And the truth is she probably wears plenty of makeup, just not as much as Carmella. So she's an attractive girl, and it's rude of them to say she's ugly because she's not typical. So they get the win. She looked good. Everybody was happy. The crowd loves her. Move on to the Intercontinental title match. It's The Miz versus Shinsuke Nakamura and his hype man, Sami Zayn. Sami Zayn, I liked his gimmick, holding fans accountable, but it's pretty clear he's been demoted.
Because you suck.
I didn't say it. The Iron Sheik said it. This match was a throwaway match that didn't need to happen, and The Miz jobs pretty quickly, so we're going to move on now to Sasha Bluebanks versus Becky Lynch for the red version of the women's title. Becky wore a new outfit. She was not Speed Racer this time, but in case any of you were wondering, she was still the man.
You can act like a man.
She did indeed act like a man. This was a DQ where Becky steals Sasha's gimmick. So, all right, for those of you keeping track at home, all right, she stole Seth Rollins' manhood, and she's stolen Stone Cold Steve Austin's gimmick. And now in this match, she decided to carry on the Austin gimmick, and by doing so, steals Sasha's new gimmick. So she got to use a chair on Sasha, and she got to get herself disqualified, and she got to run off and get cheered as a heel, even though Sasha's supposed to be the heel. And she got to keep the belt, even though it would have been better had Sasha got the belt. So this builds to a Hell in the Cell Sasha Banks versus Becky Lynch match that Sasha Banks is going to win. And if she doesn't, all of the blue-haired people in the world are going to unite, and they're going to create their own hashtag, and it's going to be a Twitter movement, and the man is going to be found guilty of misogynistic behavior and sexual discrimination against women. That's what's going to happen. That's what I'm predicting. The blue hair people need to unite behind Sasha against Becky at Hell in the Cell. I'm calling for it. You heard it here first. We're knee-deep in the mid-card, so it makes perfect sense that there'll be a WWE World Title match here, right? Randy Orton versus Kofi Kingston. I'm not even going to cover this match. Kofi wins. About 30% of the people in the crowd seemed happy and dancing to the New Day song. We're going to move forward now to the Rip Roarin' Ragin' Roman Party Rid Part 2. This is a grudge match planned later on the card than Kofi retaining the WWE title. Tell me something. If Randy Orton wins his 14th world title, do you think he's a mid-carder like Kofi Kingston?
You asked me excellent question.
Nah, I don't think he is. Rowan out second, normally the spot for the bigger talent or the champion, which is pretty cool since he's getting the push here. As I said last week, Rowan needs to win this for this to make any sense at all. Otherwise, it's just a 5-week or 6-week storyline that goes nowhere except Roman Reigns spinning his wheels in a non-title situation on an off-season pay-per-view. But instead, we're building a character, so Rowan hitting Roman Reigns with a car actually matters now. It's giving Daniel Bryan something to do, which we'll see on SmackDown this week. Rowan gets over because Luke Harper comes back. I guess this is an indicator that Luke Harper's worked out his contract differences. He was kind of a holdout. He'd asked for a release, and they decided to send him home and pay him rather than put him on TV or let AEW have him. With the Bischoff-Heyman mix-up, these two taking control of their respective programs, all of the guys and ladies who had been unhappy, like Sasha Banks and like Luke Harper, are now kind of reevaluating their position and maybe seeing if there's a place for them or if they should continue to just run off to Thailand and lose their mind or sit at home and wait for Cody Rhodes to call. So as this worked out, Luke Harper healed from the surgery that he'd had, and now he's run in, he's got a character now, and he's helping Rowan. Rowan goes over on Roman Reigns. Now we've got the Bludgeon Brothers back together. But this time they actually get to get over on a couple of former world champions and future Hall of Famers instead of just squashing the Fashion Police on the undercard of a pay-per-view. WWE Universal title match tonight, Braun Strowman versus Seth Rollins. I was calling for Braun Strowman to finally get his turn. We're not going to go through all of Seth Rollins' formulaic matches in order because it's the same match all the time. But I can tell you that he hit his first stomp and he got a big pop, and he hit his second stomp and there was this awkward silence and boos from the crowd and a kick out, and then he hit a pedigree and about 60% of the crowd booed. And he hit a stomp and 70% booed. And he got a pin and he got a pop because all the young kids and females popped for him. But by the end of that match, everybody was ready to see Braun Strowman, and no one wanted to see a pedigree, and no one wanted to see another foot stomp. But that's what they got. It's okay, though, because to cleanse our palate, we got to see Bray Wyatt the Fiend come out and lay waste to the Universal Champion Seth Rollins on the ramp, completely negating the match we just watched happen. And everybody cheered for that one, so yeah, all the plans that Vince had made before Bray Wyatt started campaigning and going into business for himself on Twitter, yeah, there went those plans. And the reactionary way that the WWF will write a script months in advance and then just tear it up and throw it away. Yep, every time. Thank you, Bray Wyatt, for blowing up the plans everybody had. That's good stuff. You're going to blow it all up. He's blowing it all up. We're going to Hell in a Cell. We're going to see Bray Wyatt versus Seth Rollins. Here it comes. There you go. And by the way, Braun Strowman, your title run, it's over. Your title run ended before it ever began. We got explosions everywhere. Moving on to Monday Night Raw at the University of Tennessee. That's smart booking, folks. Booking in buildings that you can sell out with rowdy crowds that you don't even have to work that hard to impress. College campuses. You just keep the beer flowing. Everybody will be happy. Seth Rollins gets a promo with a mixed reaction where he gets cut off by Bray Wyatt, and everybody's happy. Bray shows that he's been listening to this podcast. In week 1, I dropped the phrase poppycock. Rainbows and poppycock, something like that. Magic and poppycock. And Bray Wyatt's dropping poppycock on us now. So it's Bray Wyatt and I and Bray Wyatt's grandma are the only people that have used the phrase poppycock since about the Civil War. Both programs' brand new tag champions come out. They share the ring. They bicker over who gets to talk, and then Braun Strowman squashes them both. Because there's nothing like building your tag division by having 4 guys holding tag titles get squashed by 1 guy. That's brilliant booking right there. That's awesome. And so then the club fights Cedric Alexander and the Viking Raiders. This is the first match we've had in 50 minutes of programming, and it's the Viking Raiders. It's the Viking Raiders. It's the Viking Raiders. We're going to move on now. Truth, Carmella, and Kane go on a promotional tour of the University of Tennessee. Kane is going by his alter ego, Mayor of Knoxville County, Glenn Jacobs. Of course, Truth has to play the minstrel character for Vince, even though Vince isn't there this week. So Truth is still in the shuck and jive mode and pretends not to know who he is, even though they worked together for like 20 years. That's embarrassing. King of the Ring final at the 1 hour mark. Baron Corbin tries to celebrate, and sad Chad Gable comes out and ruins his party. I'll tell you, this is an example of Paul Heyman proving his brilliance again. For those of you wrestling historians who want to see this playbook played out in its original form, you can go look up Mikey Whipwreck in the ECW. Mikey Whipwreck was a fat kid, maybe a teenager, maybe 20 years old, and he worked the ring crew, and he'd get there early. He's first guy to the arena, putting the ring together, and after the ring was put together, he'd volunteer to take bumps from some of the guys. And Paul Heyman saw that he was sympathetic and that everybody'd feel bad for this kid, and he put him in a ring, and he gave him titles, and his whole job was to get crushed and to make people feel bad, and he was a star. And Chad Gable, he's not a short, fat kid who puts the ring together. He's an Olympic athlete. Paul Heyman is a genius, and he's made Chad Gable the new Mikey Whipwreck, and people want to see sad Chad. So sad Chad comes out and he blows up the King of the Ring set, which totally devalues King of the Ring. But I'm convinced it doesn't matter. Nobody will remember, and Paul has no respect for King of the Ring. It's obvious, but I'm glad Baron Corbin won. And King Corbin's going to get to use this in some cool promos, and he'll get some huge boos and lots of heat, and that's his job. There really wasn't a whole lot of time for Baron Corbin to celebrate anyway, because we needed to hurry up and get to the gender reveal party for Maria Kanellis' baby. Yeah, that was happening. But that's okay, it was interesting because it was announced that Ricochet is the baby's father, to which Ricochet was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Mike Bennett and Ricochet have a match no one cares about, and of course Ricochet wins. And then Maria comes out and emasculates her husband some more. And then Rusev arrives, and we're told that Rusev is actually the father of the baby. And I think they're going to stick with this. Paul Heyman is gathering people that the company has insulted, has let stall out and sent home, basically. So we got nothing to do with you anymore. I mean, look at this. We've got Mike Bennett and Maria Kanellis, who asked for releases and were told no. And then Maria gets pregnant again because, hey, you're not working, so why not just have sex nonstop and have another baby? They bring Rusev back, who has been sent home after he was in a tag team with Shinsuke Nakamura, and they break the tag team up because he was in a duo with Aiden English and had a song and was selling t-shirts and everybody loved it, but they didn't want him to get over, so they broke that up. And then they decided to move Shinsuke off on his own and give him a title, but they had nothing to do with Rusev. So now Rusev, he's trimmed down, he's lost some weight, and he's grown a porn stash, and he's shown up, and we're told that the porn stash and the new slightly slimmer body is so irresistible that Maria Kanellis could not stop from having sex with him, despite all the sex she was having with Mike Bennett and apparently Ricochet, and maybe one of the Street Profits. In the gender reveal party, there's a line dropped about Maria Kanellis riding on a pole, and that being how we got in this whole mess in the first place. And I stood up and started yelling, ECW, ECW, because this is something straight out of ECW. We have re-entered the Attitude Era, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm okay with it. Later on in the program, we've got Sasha and Bayley, who get no reaction from the crowd at all, versus Nikki Cross and Alexa Bliss. Sasha Banks hits the panty shot for the victory. The bank statement, sorry. What a shot we had. Even the camera work has changed to be more Attitude Era-like in the presentation. I remember 2 years ago, we were no longer allowed to see Nikki Bella's ass when she did her hip swivel at the top of the ramp. And they would pull the camera off of her right as she got turned around, and I would just scream at the TV every week. And eventually, she just stopped coming on TV. So I forgot how irritating that was, but Sasha Banks hitting the panty shot for the victory. Take a look at that camera work. That's some amazing stuff. There's a run-in by Charlotte Flair, and the segment ends with Sasha and Bayley literally rolling around in the floor, touching thighs, having intimate moments. Bayley covering Sasha's face with her hair and whispering at her. This was good stuff. Lacey Evans versus Dana Brooke. Dana just keeps getting better. We're promoting a Natty-Lacey feud still, so I was upset last week when Lacey lost to Natty, but apparently we're going to have a third match, and Lacey's going to get over, and that's good because, as we've established, Corey Graves has told you all that Natty is a nasty. In the main event tonight, we got Seth Rollins, the Universal Champion, versus half of Beer Money in a non-title match. There are run-ins by half of Tennessee in this match. We've got the OC, we've got Dolph Ziggler, and then we've got Kane. And then we've got the Fiend Bray Wyatt, who comes out and puts Kane down. And then we've got New Jack, and he comes in with a shopping cart. And then New Jack is interrupted by Roadkill, the Mad Amish Warrior. Okay, those things didn't happen, but Bray Wyatt did. He just continues to collect old-timers to put the Mandible Claw on. The show ends with a weird outro for 1 minute and 48 seconds. And let me tell you what was happening in Stamford, Connecticut, while Vince McMahon was trying to make deals for the XFL and actually had the audacity to take a week off from live TV. He's watching for 1 minute and 48 seconds as Raw goes off the air with this slow motion upside down burning film Firefly Funhouse title card, and you know he's on the phone before the 2 minutes is up, screaming at somebody about what a waste of time this is and is this the best thing you could come up with. You know he was. And apparently he was calling nonstop before SmackDown and was very involved in approving absolutely everything that took place on SmackDown. So Eric Bischoff is paying on Tuesday for Paul Heyman and the liberties he takes on Monday. It was an interesting way to end the program, but gosh, talk about abusing the newfound power you've been given. Let's move on to SmackDown, the New Day versus Randy and the Revival. This is just ridiculous that we continue to have to do this, but it's over now. Because, ladies and gentlemen, we are about to enter the Brock Lesnar era, and I couldn't be happier. Oh, you can boo all you want. You can boo all you want, but just like I told you last week in episode 2 of this podcast, if Kofi Kingston beat Randy Orton at the pay-per-view, then we were going to see Kofi get pinned in the center of the ring 1, 2, 3 at the first Fox Sports taping or live program, and that's exactly what's going to happen. Brock Lesnar comes out. He and Paul Heyman challenge Kofi Kingston. Of course, Kofi has to accept, and it is time for us to finally move on past this transitional champion. Fox Sports fans and sports bars all over the country are going to get to watch Brock Lesnar become the WWE champion live on television, and that will keep their interest. And they'll bitch a little bit less next week when they see SmackDown come on TV. And that's the whole point. Kevin Owens is going to sue Shane McMahon for $25 million and Shane McMahon's job. And these are the kinds of storylines that only Eric Bischoff and the litigious mind that he has could convince a redneck wrestling fan makes sense. I love this storyline. This is good stuff. Unfortunately, it's probably going to be followed by Shane McMahon taking a break from television for a while. And I love the Shane McMahon character. I was so excited when he came back and took a break from his job in South Korea or whatever he was doing, crashing helicopters or whatever he's doing. I loved having him back. He's had some great matches. He's obviously bulked up some. He still works out. But, he doesn't have a whole lot of years left to jump off of things and risk his body the way he has been. And Charlotte and Sasha Banks have a match that's interrupted by commercial breaks and probably shouldn't have taken place. I think this is an example of Eric Bischoff not really understanding or having the proper respect for the product that took place before he got here. I know Eric wasn't sitting around every week watching the new product, so he isn't aware that Charlotte and Sasha, they got a history of great matches, and this wasn't one of them, and that's a shame. Carmella, though, has been given an angle here. She came out to rescue Charlotte from a beatdown from Bayley and Sasha. It'd be nice to see Carmella have something to do besides run around and literally piggyback on R-Truth. It's silly, and it's stupid. And they haven't even given her the 24/7 title. I keep waiting for her to win the 24/7 title, and it hasn't happened. So it's nice to see her out here working in the women's division again. In the main event, we have Daniel Bryan cut a promo, another non-match main event on SmackDown. Daniel now plays the character of the irrational babyface. This gives a chance for Rowan and Harper to come work him over and beat him up and help get him over later and get themselves some heat now. The big dog Roman Reigns comes out and he gets laid down too, and the program ends with the Bludgeon Brothers bludgeoning people. And with that, I do believe we may have gotten through this week's recaps. That is some craziness. Yeah, no kidding. What a week. A lot of programming this week. In our rumors section this week, John Cena got a major role in the upcoming Suicide Squad sequel entitled The Suicide Squad. When you add a preposition, you know that it's going to be a better movie. I still haven't seen the first one because I had very little interest. So adding the word the and John Cena gives me slightly more than very little interest. So we're going to move on now. There are some free agents and some people that apparently may have an interest in going to AEW. There's a whole list of them online. I'll tell you the three I'm interested in. Austin Aries is apparently with a company called Major League Wrestling, and they're being very territorial and possessive about keeping him and other talent of theirs away from AEW. But Austin Aries never gets along when bosses try to tell him what to do, so it's quite possible he'll show up on AEW and TNT sooner rather than later. Jack Swagger apparently has a relationship with Chris Jericho, and he could end up showing up soon. He's been on Bellator MMA, and he's got a 2-0 MMA record. He wanted to be an MMA fighter, and apparently he's an MMA fighter now, with an opposite record of CM Punk, so that's always a good thing. Another rumor out there, we're looking at Johnny Impact. I guess he could change his name to Johnny Elite, Johnny Morrison. This guy puts on great matches. I don't know how many t-shirts he sells, though. So you sign Johnny Valkyrie, he's going to be a good locker room guy. He's going to put on great matches. He's going to make your talent look good. You've got a lot of young guys in AEW right now that could use the experience of a guy like Johnny Impact. For those of you keeping track at home, we are an hour and 4 minutes into this podcast. I've taken about 5 breaths. Third segment this week, we're going to continue our game where you are the booker of your own independent territory. Now, you've made yourself a roster. And I told you to keep that roster, think about it for a week, mull it over. I meant to tell you guys last week that in my household, Impact Wrestling and WWE are considered world championships that are valid world championships in the current landscape because TNA has a storied franchise with their belt. TNA was originally an NWA property, so I don't really consider Ring of Honor a world championship or any other independent, really. WCW was a world championship, so when you're making your roster and I say multi-time world champion, that's something you should keep in mind. But in your household, you can do it however you'd like. Now, I told you if you play this game with people, it'd be different than playing on your own, but for the sake of camaraderie, if you are playing by yourself, then you're going to be playing with and against me and my girlfriend, because we each made rosters, and it changed my game the way she made her roster. So, I'm going to read you guys some rules here. If you got 2 or more people and you each choose a talent, no matter what slot you put that talent in last week, then you lose that person to arbitration. So whether you chose somebody as your top talent and somebody else chose them as top talent, or whether you chose somebody as a veteran and a friend of yours chose him as a general manager, it doesn't matter. If you each chose Triple H, you both lose Triple H to arbitration. Same deal with a city. If you each choose the same city, you and somebody else you're playing with, then you get no city. You are a traveling promotion with no home base and no cable contract. You'll rely on your partnerships with other organizations in order to get exposure on television for your talent. Same with the pay-per-view. If you choose the same pay-per-view, if you choose Starrcade and somebody else in the room chooses Starrcade, then neither of you get a pay-per-view. And you're going to have to work with another company to get spots on their pay-per-view. And you're probably going to have to sacrifice some of your guys in order to get 1 or 2 of your guys over. With this in mind, take a look at your roster, compare notes with the people you're playing with, and if you're not playing with anybody else, you're playing against and with me and my girlfriend. So I'm going to go down the roster here. I know some of you are going to have a problem with some of the guys I chose, but we're going to start at the top and work our way down. My 2 veterans are John Cena and The Undertaker. My top guys are AJ Styles and EC3. I know, there are groans out there. I don't know how I ended up with EC3 and forgot so many other people. But lucky for me, nobody else has chosen EC3 in my bracket. I love EC3. My tag team is Phoenix and Pentagon Jr. My mid-carders are Samoa Joe, Kevin Owens, and Sami Callihan. Yes, Sami Callihan. I know. Everybody hates my roster, but the multi-time world champion thing, Samoa Joe is a world champion in TNA, but he's never been a world champion in WWE. So depending on how you recognize the world title, you might have different guys in different slots, but just make sure the people you're playing with go by the same rules you do. My top woman is Charlotte Flair. My producer booker is Eric Bischoff. My valet hype man GM is a GM slot for Triple H. And my commentator was Mauro Ranallo. The city I chose was Philadelphia in the Northeast region, and the pay-per-view I chose was Starrcade. Now, I thought that my lineup and my ideas were great, but the first person I chose to play against was my girlfriend, and I told her the rules and just said make a roster, put yourself on a clock, kind of like I did. She ends up choosing as her veterans Kane and John Cena, so I lose my veteran babyface right off the top. Her top talent choices are Roman Reigns and Bray Wyatt, mainly because she knew that I hadn't chose Roman. I chose EC3 and never once thought of Roman Reigns and was pitching a fit about it, and she thought that was funny, so she chose Roman knowing I hadn't. Her tag team choices were Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, but since I had Kevin Owens as a mid-carder who'd won 1 world title, she lost half of her tag team and I lost my mid-carder to arbitration. Her mid-card choices were R-Truth, Heath Slater, and Cesaro. I can't believe. I bet you if 100 people did a draft like this, no one else is drafting Heath Slater. And nobody else is probably drafting EC3 either. But I gotta believe that if Heath Slater fought EC3 in a Judy Bagwell in a pole match, EC3's coming over in like 4.5 minutes. He's getting over, and I don't care about Heath Slater's kids in that scenario. I don't think it matters. Cesaro's a good choice. Top woman, my girlfriend chose Nia Jax. She chose Nashville, that we're going to call the Midwest region, and her pay-per-view is Extreme Rules. Her producer booker is Goldust. Her promo person, I guess a GM, she has Mick Foley. And her commentary, she's got a lead commentator of Chris Jericho, probably a color guy actually. She lost half her tag team and asked me what to do about it, and since I just created this game 2 weeks ago, I really had no idea what to do about it. I told her she needed to put somebody else with Sami Zayn and probably job them out, because they're not a legitimate tag team, and she's not really going to convince another promotion to job their tag team to hers. Why would she want to invest in them? And these are the kinds of questions, these are the kinds of things you have to deal with as a booker of an independent territory. You're going to lose guys to contract disputes with other territories, especially in 2019, probably more than you would have back then. I mean, back then, again, Harley Race carried a gun, That's how he handled contract disputes. Now people are going to use lawyers, and lawyers are very expensive. They used lawyers before, but we're a more litigious society now. You see less promoters carrying guns now. At least I would like to think we live in a world where less promoters are carrying guns. Did the arbitration and playing with a group of people end up affecting who you wanted to win your world title? Because it did me. It affected my roster. I planned on having John Cena win my world title. I don't even have John Cena, so I had to pick a different matchup. What you do then to continue is you need to book your world title match. Book what type of match it is. If you're having a battle royal, fine. If you're having a one-on-one match, fine. Do you want to work with another company to promote? Did you lose your territory? Do you have to work with another company to promote? For next week, choose somebody on your roster that is going to be your super babyface. In other words, they're always a babyface, and for the duration of the 3-year contract, you cannot change that. And also, choose a super heel. For the duration of the 3-year contract, you cannot change that. My super babyface idea was John Cena, because he's already built in. But, again, I can't use John Cena that way because I don't have John Cena right now. So if your roster looks like mine and you've got empty slots in it, they're not going to be empty forever. But right now, those guys are in arbitration and nobody gets them. We're going to resolve that in future weeks. Next week, we're going to take our first stab at trying to put together a women's top 10 list. We're not going to necessarily rank anybody. But in the third segment next week, we're going to try to gather 10 women that you could base an entire company around. We're going to try to quantify how you'd even go about that between gimmick, personality, look, and we're going to pick the 10 best women, my favorite women in pro wrestling. So along with that, of course, all your news, recaps, and rumors. This is the one place you come for about an hour of all pro wrestling and only pro wrestling. This is the All Pro Wrestling 100 Podcast.